Namib Desert is a vast and unforgiving landscape where the shifting dunes hold secrets buried for eternity. In the southern reaches of this arid wasteland lies a place that defies the natural order of the world. It is a town that rose from the dust with the promise of unimaginable wealth and then vanished just as quickly. Kolmanskop stands today as a skeletal remains of a bygone era, where the sand has reclaimed dominion over the works of man. The wind howls through the shattered windows of grand mansions that once housed the richest men in Africa. Visitors who dare to walk these abandoned streets often report a heavy feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. It is said that the desert never forgets the greed that built this place. In the year 1908, a railway worker named Zacharias Luala made a discovery that would change the fate of this desolate region forever. While clearing sand from the tracks, he spotted a glittering stone lying innocently in the dirt. He brought the stone to his supervisor, August Stotch, who quickly realized it was a diamond of exceptional quality. The news spread like wildfire across the globe, drawing fortune hunters and desperate men to the burning sands of German Southwest Africa. They came with dreams of easy riches, but found a landscape that was hostile to human life. The desert demanded a heavy price for the treasures it yielded. Many men lost their minds to the isolation and the relentless heat that beat down upon them. The German colonial government moved swiftly to secure the area, declaring a massive sperrgebied, or prohibited zone, to control the mining operations. A town began to rise from the sand, constructed in the architectural style of a German village. It was a surreal sight to behold, with steep roofs and ornate facades standing in stark contrast to the endless dunes. They built a hospital, a ballroom, a power station, and even a bowling alley to entertain the wealthy inhabitants. Fresh water and champagne were imported from Cape Town, creating an oasis of luxury in the middle of nowhere. But beneath the veneer of civilization lay a darkness that grew with every carat pulled from the earth. The wealth was built on the backs of laborers who toiled in brutal conditions. As the town of Kolmanskop flourished, the greed of its inhabitants grew insatiable and reckless. The hospital became the site of the first X-ray machine in the southern hemisphere. But it was not used solely for medical purposes. The administrators used the machine to scan the workers, ensuring that no diamonds were being smuggled out in their bodies. This invasive practice sowed seeds of resentment and fear among the workforce, who felt treated like cattle. Legends began to circulate about a particular overseer named Heinrich Mueller, who was known for his cruelty. Mueller was a man consumed by the fever of the diamond rush, and he drove his men to the brink of exhaustion. He believed that the desert was hiding a mother lode that would make him a king. The atmosphere in the town was one of manic energy fueled by the constant discovery of precious stones. People lived in a bubble of opulence, ignoring the harsh reality of the desert that surrounded them on all sides. They held lavish parties in the ballroom, where the music of orchestras drowned out the howling of the wind outside. But as the years passed, the easy diamonds on the surface began to grow scarce. The miners had to dig deeper and work harder to maintain the flow of wealth. The sand began to creep back into the streets, piling up against the doors of the houses. It was a slow and silent invasion that signaled the beginning of the end. The desert was patient, and it was waiting to take back what was stolen. Heinrich Mueller refused to accept the decline of the diamond fields and became obsessed with finding one last great deposit. He spent his nights poring over maps and his days shouting at the workers to dig faster. His eyes grew wild, and his skin was burned dark by the relentless sun. The other residents began to whisper that the desert madness had taken hold of him. He stopped attending the social gatherings and isolated himself in his grand house at the edge of town. Strange noises were heard coming from his residence late at night, like the sound of frantic digging beneath the floorboards. The servants fled his house, claiming that the shadows in the rooms moved on their own. One particularly stifling night, a thick fog rolled in from the Atlantic Ocean, blanketing the town in a ghostly white shroud. The fog was a common occurrence in the Namib, but this time it brought with it a chilling cold that penetrated the bones. The residents of Kolmanskop locked their doors and huddled by their fires, trying to ignore the unnatural silence. It was on this night that the first true encounter with the supernatural occurred. A young nurse at the hospital was making her rounds when she saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. The figure was covered in sand, and its eyes glowed with a pale blue light. She froze in terror as the figure pointed a skeletal finger toward the desert. The nurse fainted from the shock, and when she was found the next morning, she was incoherent and raving about the Sandman. The town doctor dismissed her claims as hysteria brought on by the isolation. But a seed of unease had been planted. In the days that followed, more people began to report strange occurrences around the town. Tools would go missing, only to be found buried in the sand days later. The sound of footsteps echoed in empty corridors, and the laughter of children could be heard in the abandoned playground. The sandstorms became more frequent and intense, battering the buildings with a fury that felt personal. It seemed as though the desert itself was angry. Heinrich Mueller was not deterred by the strange events, and instead seemed to feed off the dark energy that was consuming the town. He became convinced that the spirits of the desert were guarding the mother lode he sought. He began to conduct rituals in his basement, calling out to the ancient forces of the land. His sanity had completely fractured, and he was now a vessel for the greed that had poisoned the town. One evening, a group of concerned citizens went to his house to to intervene, but they found the doors barricaded. From inside, they heard Mueller screaming in triumph and the sound of rocks shattering. They forced the door open and were met with a wave of cold air and dust. The house was empty save for the piles of sand that had inexplicably filled the rooms from floor to ceiling. There was no sign of Mueller, but a tunnel had been dug through the foundation of the house, leading deep into the earth. The men were too terrified to follow him down into the darkness. They sealed the house and tried to forget what they had seen, but the presence of Mueller lingered over the town like a curse. The diamond production continued to plummet, and families began to pack their belongings to leave. The once vibrant town was slowly emptying out, leaving behind only the ghosts of its past. The desert was winning the war of attrition. By the 1950s, the town of Kolmanskop was almost completely abandoned, as richer diamond deposits were found further south. The grand houses were left to the elements, and the sand began its final conquest. Windows were shattered by the wind, and doors were ripped from their hinges. The dunes marched into the living rooms and bedrooms, burying the furniture and the memories of those who lived there. But the story of Heinrich Mueller was not over. Locals claimed that on nights when the moon was full, the sound of a pickaxe striking stone could be heard coming from beneath the ruins. They said that Mueller was still down there, digging for his treasure in the underworld. A team of paranormal investigators arrived in the town decades later to document the haunting of the ghost town. They set up their equipment in the old ballroom, which was now half filled with sand. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive, and the air felt thick with static electricity. As they began their recording session, the temperature in the room dropped 30 degrees in a matter of seconds. Their cameras malfunctioned, and the batteries drained instantly. Out of the darkness came a voice that was dry and raspy like sandpaper rubbing together. It whispered the German word for diamonds over and over again. The investigators fled the building in a panic, leaving their equipment behind. One of the investigators, named Sarah, felt a compulsion to return to the town the following night, drawn by an unseen force. She walked alone through the silent streets, guided by the moonlight reflecting off the sand. She found herself standing in front of the ruin of the house that once belonged to Heinrich Mueller. The sand had swallowed most of the structure, but the entrance to the basement was visible. Against her better judgment, she descended into the darkness, using only a flashlight to guide her way. The air grew colder with every step, and the smell of decay filled her nostrils. She reached the bottom and found a tunnel that stretched into the unknown. Sarah walked down the tunnel for what felt like hours, losing all sense of time and direction. The walls were rough and jagged, carved by the hands of a madman. Finally, she reached a cavernous chamber where the air was still and silent. In the center of the room stood a figure with its back turned to her. It was wearing the tattered remains of a suit from the early 20th century. Sarah tried to speak, but her voice was caught in her throat. The figure slowly turned around, revealing a face that was mummified by the dry desert air. It was Heinrich Mueller, and in his hand he held a rough diamond the size of a fist. The creature that was once Mueller stared at Sarah with hollow sockets where eyes should have been. He held out the diamond as if offering it to her, but Sarah sensed a trap. She backed away slowly, but the tunnel behind her began to collapse, filling with sand. She was trapped in the tomb of the Diamond King. Mueller let out a screech that sounded like grinding metal and lunged toward her. Sarah scrambled over the rubble, desperately trying to find an escape. She found a small fissure in the rock and squeezed through it just as Mueller clawed at her heels. She emerged into the cool night air, gasping for breath. Sarah ran back to the safety of her vehicle and drove away from Kolmanskop without looking back. She survived the encounter, but the experience left a permanent mark on her soul. She often dreamed of the mummified face and the glittering diamond in the darkness. The town remains abandoned to this day, a playground for the wind and the sand. Tourists visit during the day to take photographs of the decaying beauty, but few dare to linger after sunset. The local guides warn people not to stray from the path or enter the tunnels that crisscross beneath the town. They know that something evil waits in the dark. The hospital of Kolmanskop is perhaps the most active site for paranormal activity in the entire settlement. Visitors report seeing shadowy figures moving through the long corridors where patients once lay. The peeling paint and rusted bed frames create a scene of utter desolation. Some have reported hearing the cries of pain from the workers who were treated there for injuries sustained in the mines. The X-ray room is particularly dreaded, as people feel an intense burning sensation on their skin when they enter. It is as if the machine is still operating on a spectral plane, scanning the souls of the living. The bowling alley, which was once a place of laughter and community, now sits silent and filled with dust. However, there are accounts of the sound of bowling balls rolling down the lanes when no one is there, pins crashing, and the faint applause of a crowd have been heard by terrified security guards. It is a residual haunting, a playback of a time when life was vibrant and full of hope. But beneath the nostalgia lies the grim reality that this leisure was bought with suffering. The spirits of the privileged Germans seem to be trapped in a loop, unable to leave the luxury they created. The schoolhouse stands with its roof caved in and the blackboard still hanging on the wall. Children's toys from a century ago lie half buried in the sand, serving as a poignant reminder of the innocence lost. Visitors have reported feeling small hands tugging at their clothing, or hearing the sound of a school bell ringing in the distance. The ghost of a strict schoolmaster is said to patrol the perimeter, ensuring that the the children behave even in death. The sadness in this building is palpable, weighing heavy on the hearts of those who enter. It is a place where the future was nurtured only to be abandoned. The butcher shop, with its rusted hooks and tiled walls, is a place of visceral horror for many who visit. The energy here is aggressive and violent, perhaps, reflecting the slaughter that took place. Cold spots are common, and some have reported being pushed or scratched by unseen hands. The smell of rotting meat sometimes wafts through the air, despite the shop being empty for decades. It is a reminder of the carnal needs of the town and the consumption that drove its existence. The ghosts here are not sorrowful. They are angry and hungry. The ice factory, which once provided relief from the scorching heat, is now a stifling oven. The machinery sits silent and corroded, a testament to the ingenuity that failed to conquer the desert. Mechanics and engineers have reported seeing apparitions of workers repairing the machines, their movements jerky and unnatural. The sound of steam escaping and gears grinding can be heard echoing off the metal walls. It is a place of ceaseless labor, where the work never ends, even after death. The desert heat has reclaimed the space, mocking the attempts to create ice in hell. The general store, which once stocked goods from Germany, is now a shell of broken shelves and debris. It was the heart of the town, where gossip was exchanged and supplies were purchased. Now it is a place where whispers seem to come from the walls themselves. People have reported seeing a shopkeeper behind the counter fading away as they approach. The ledgers and papers that litter the floor tell the story of debts unpaid and transactions left incomplete. It is a monument to the commerce that built the town and the bankruptcy that followed. The power station, which generated electricity for the town, and the mines, is a towering structure of industrial decay. It was the first power station in the region, a symbol of modernity and progress. Now it stands as a dark monolith, casting long shadows over the ruins. Electricians who have visited the site report their meters going haywire and their flashlights flickering uncontrollably. The hum of electricity can sometimes be felt in the air, raising the hair on the arms of visitors. It is as if the station is still generating a power that is not of this world. The grand mansions of the architects and mining engineers sit on the hill overlooking the town. These houses were the epitome of luxury, with stained glass windows and imported marble. Now the sand fills the bathtubs and covers the fireplaces. The spirits of the elite seem to cling to these homes, unwilling to give up their status. Visitors have reported seeing figures in formal wear, standing on the balconies, gazing out at the empty desert. The sound of piano music drifting from the parlors is a common auditory hallucination reported by many. As the sun sets over the Namib Desert, the shadows lengthen, and Kolmanskop takes on a sinister appearance. The golden light turns to a bruised purple, and the wind begins to pick up. This is the time when the tourists leave, and the town belongs to the dead. The silence is profound, broken only by the shifting of the sand and the creaking of wood. It is a time for reflection on the impermanence of human endeavors. The desert cares nothing for wealth or status. It only knows time and erosion. The legend of the ghost town has spread far and wide, attracting thrill seekers and ghost hunters from around the world. But those who treat the site with disrespect often find themselves followed by bad luck. Cameras break cars, refuse to start, and nightmares plague their sleep. It is said that taking a souvenir from Kolmanskop is a curse, inviting the spirits to follow you home. The sand and stones belong to the desert, and taking them is an act of theft that is not forgiven. The spirits guard their territory with a jealous possessiveness. There are stories of hikers who have gotten lost in the Sperjebiet and stumbled upon the town in a state of delirium. They speak of a town that is fully inhabited with lights shining in the windows and music playing in the streets. They claim to have been invited in by smiling residents who offered them water and shelter. But when they woke up the next morning, they were lying in the ruins, surrounded by sand and decay. It is a mirage of the past, a siren call to lure the weary traveler into the embrace of the dead. The geological forces that created the diamonds also created the desolate landscape that protects them. It is a land of extremes where the heat can kill in hours and the cold can freeze the blood. The spirits of Kolmanskop are a product of this environment, forged in the crucible of the desert. They are hard and unyielding like the diamonds they coveted in life. They are trapped in the sand, unable to move on, bound to the place of their greatest triumph and their ultimate failure. The Namibian government has preserved the town as a museum, but nature is slowly winning the battle. Every year, the dunes move closer, swallowing more of the buildings. Eventually, Kolmanskop will disappear, completely buried under the shifting sands. But the stories and the ghosts will remain lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the next fool to dig them up. The town is a warning to all who believe they can conquer nature. It is a testament to the fact that everything returns to dust. As you leave Kolmanskop and drive back into the modern world, the image of the sand-filled rooms stays with you. It is a haunting visual metaphor for the passage of time and the inevitability of death. The town is a diamond in the rough, a beautiful and deadly gem set in the desert sand. The ghosts of the miners and the millionaires dance together in the moonlight, united in their demise. And if you listen closely to the wind, you can hear them whispering the name of the man who doomed them all, Heinrich Mueller. The night brings a final chill as the stars emerge over the vast expanse of the Namib. The constellations look down upon the ruins, just as they did a century ago. The universe is indifferent to the rise and fall of towns. and the suffering of men. But in the silence of the desert, the energy of Kolmanskop pulses like a faint heartbeat. It is a reminder that some things refuse to die. The greed, the passion, and the madness are preserved in the grains of sand forever. The tale of Kolmanskop is not just a history lesson. It is a psychological ghost story that plays out in the mind of the observer. It forces us to confront our own mortality and the futility of material wealth. The empty rooms filled with sand are a mirror reflecting our own emptiness. We build our castles and we gather our treasures, but in the end, the sand takes it all. The ghost town is a memento mori, a reminder that we are but dust in the wind. So if you ever find yourself in the southern reaches of Namibia and you see a sign pointing to Kolmanskop, proceed with caution. Respect the dead and do not disturb the ruins. Take nothing but photographs and leave nothing but footprints. And if you hear a scratching sound coming from beneath the ground, do not investigate. Just walk away and never look back, for the desert has many secrets, and some are better left buried. The legacy of the diamond rush is written in the landscape, a scar that will never fully heal. The mounds of overturned earth and the crumbling walls are the hieroglyphs of a lost civilization. Future generations will look upon these ruins and wonder at the madness that drove men to build here. They will tell stories of the ghosts that walk the sand and the curse of the diamonds, and the legend of Kolmanskop will continue to grow, fed by the mystery and the fear of the unknown. As the darkness fully claims the desert, the town of Kolmanskop disappears into the shadows. It becomes one with the dunes, a phantom settlement in a sea of sand. The wind erases the footprints of the living, leaving the town once again to the dead. The cycle continues as it has for decades, and as it will for centuries to come. The diamonds sleep in the earth, and the ghosts watch over them, eternal guardians of the desert treasure. The final image that lingers is that of the open door, allowing the desert to enter. It is an invitation to the inevitable, a surrender to the forces of nature. The room beyond is filled with the golden sand, glowing softly in the moonlight. It is beautiful and terrifying, a perfect tomb for the memories of the past. The silence is absolute, final, and complete. Kolmanskop waits for the end of time. We leave the ghosts to their eternal vigil in the shifting sands of the Namib. They are the permanent residents, now the true owners of the town. Their voices are the wind, their tears are the dust. They have found their peace in the desolation, a peace that eluded them in life. And perhaps in the end, that is the only treasure that truly matters. The story of Kolmanskop is a diamond in the desert sand, hard, sharp, and brilliant. It cuts through the veil of time and exposes the raw humanity beneath. It is a story of dreams and nightmares, of glory and ruin. It is a story that will never truly end as long as the wind blows and the sand moves. The desert remembers, so close your eyes and listen to the whisper of the dunes. Can you hear the piano playing in the ballroom? Can you hear the laughter of the children? Can you hear the pickaxe striking the stone? They are all there waiting for you in the ghost town, waiting to share their story, waiting to pull you into the sand. And as the screen fades to black, remember that the line between the past and the present is an illusion. We are all walking on the same sand, destined for the same fate. The ghosts of Kolmanskop are not just spirits of the past, they are reflections of our future. Sleep well and beware the call of the diamonds in the desert.